Okay, traders, in this lesson, I want to show you guys how you can add various filters to your candlestick pattern detection. So in the lessons to come, we will be building out practical tools and indicators that combine candlestick patterns with indicator conditions, market conditions, and so on. But to wrap up this section of the course, I'd like to just show you a few commonly used filters, simple filters that you can use to enhance the accuracy of the setups you detect in your scripts. So for this lesson, I'm going to show you three different filters. The first is an ATR filter, and the purpose of this filter is to filter out very large candles. So for example, right now I have the bearish and bullish engulfing candle script on my chart from earlier in the course. And this script is just indiscriminately detecting swing low and swing high engulfing candles, including this gigantic candle here. Now, if we were to try to trade this setup with a 1 ATR stop loss below the swing low and a 1 ATR target above the entry, we'd have a gigantic trade setup here. Now, it looks like this trade might have won, just looking at price action here. But generally speaking, entering trades on gigantic candles is usually not a good idea. And by gigantic candles, I mean gigantic candles compared to the recent range. So you can see all these candles here were quite small, and then we get this giant volatile candle. It's generally best to ignore these sorts of setups in your scripts. Now, obviously, you could use discretion to enter on this trade. If it was a trading setup you wanted to trade, you could wait for a pullback to deeper into the candle. It's like the 50% Fibonacci range. That's a technique I like to use in my trading. I wait for price to pull back to the 50% mark before I enter a trade on a large candle. But when it comes to automation and just general setup detection, I like to ignore these large candles. We can do that using an ATR filter. And what we can do is measure the candle size, divide that candle size by the current ATR, and that will tell us how big this candle is in relation to the recent average true range. The second filter I want to show you is an EMA filter. Now, it doesn't need to be an EMA if you prefer simple moving averages or any other type of moving average. You can, of course, swap the EMA for that moving average if you want to. And then the final filter we're going to add is just a swing low, swing high filter, which we already have in this script. We are already checking if this is a swing low or swing high candlestick pattern, but we'll add an option in the settings menu to turn this filter on or off. And we'll do that for all of our filters. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is tidy up the code a little bit. I'm going to comment, add some more comments, documentation to document the code, explain what the code does, because the more complex our scripts get, the more important it is to document what the code does. Right now, the script is quite simple to understand. There's only 6 lines of code, but pretty soon we're going to have a couple dozen lines of code and we need to document what we're doing. So first we're going to get some user input. Then this code here is going to be our get swing high low filter. This code here is our detect candlestick pattern code. And then we have our draw signals and data code. So these are our sections for our script. The first user input I'm going to get is our ATR size input. And this will be an input.float. It's going to be a decimal number. And we're going to title this max candle size. And I'll leave it as that. We'll give it a default value of just 1.0 for now for demonstration purposes. So by default, if the bar we are analyzing in our script is greater than 1 times the ATR, we are going to ignore that bar. Generally speaking, I would set this higher to 2 or 3, but for now, we'll leave it as 1 just so that we can actually see it in action. If you set it too high, it won't ignore many setups. And then just to show you guys how to use it, we're going to use tooltips and groups in this lesson as well. I don't do that a lot throughout the course because it's just unnecessary, but I don't want you guys to forget about this functionality in Pine, especially with complex scripts. It's a good idea to use tooltips and groups to organize your settings menu and explain what your settings do. So for this, I'm going to set a tooltip to say the script divides the candle size by ATR and compares it to this. And then I'll also set the group of this to, now when we're setting up groups, we could just write in here ATR filter, and then any other user input relating to the ATR filter can be under the same group. All you need to do is give it the same string. But personally, I like to take this string out of my inputs and create a persistent VAR variable for this. So the way I like to do this You don't need to do it this way, but I like to do it this way. I like to write out a variable that starts with G underscore, so I know that this is a group title. And then I just call this whatever it's going to be. In this case, it's just going to be a G underscore ATR variable, which means group ATR. That's how I like to structure my inputs, especially in more complex scripts. And I'll explain why in a moment. So now I can paste that string in here. I'm going to indent my equal signs to make the code a little bit more organized, a little bit more pleasing to the eye. That's obviously optional as well. And then I'm going to assign the group ID or name to G underscore ATR. And that's this variable here. And now if I create multiple inputs with the same group title, let's say that down the road I want to change the name of the group. I can just do it in one place and I don't need to go through and edit every single input that contains this string. I can just edit the value of this variable here. And the reason why I set it to a VAR variable is that this variable will be initialized on the very first bar in our chart and will never change. So it's just a little bit of optimization there. It's definitely overkill. I don't think it will slow your script down at all to regenerate this variable on every new bar on your chart, but it's a good practice to get into, I think. When you can optimize your code as you're writing it, you might as well. So now the next variable, input variable I'm going to get is use ATR filter. And I'm going to indent these equal signs here as well. And this is going to be an input.bool, Boolean input, true or false input. I'm going to title this use ATR filter, question mark, and I'll throw these on. You don't need to put a question mark if you don't want to, but I like to. And I'm going to set the default value to false. And the tooltip will say turns on/off the ATR filter. And we'll give it the same group, G underscore ATR. So let's save our code, see how this works. Open up the settings menu. Here we have our ATR settings. Perfect. So we need a couple more inputs here. The next one is going to be our EMA filter variables. So I'm going to create another group title variable here called G underscore EMA. And this is going to be called EMA filter. And then we need to get an EMA length and a use EMA filter input. So I'm going to indent my equal signs here. So this first length input is going to be an integer, a whole number. We'll title this EMA length. I'll give it a default value of 50. And the tooltip will be length of the EMA filter. And we'll set the group to G underscore EMA. And then our use EMA filter is going to be a input boolean. So I can paste that in there, title it use EMA filter, give it a default value of false, and a tooltip of turns on/off the EMA filter. We'll give it the same group, G underscore EMA. Done. Those are our EMA filter settings. The final settings we need is our high and low, swing high and low filter. So I'm going to call this group name variable G underscore HL for high low, and I'll title it high/low filter. And then we need a look back input, which is also going to be an integer input, just like our EMA length. I'll title this swing high/low look back. I'll give it a default value of 10 because that's what we're using down here. And a tooltip of how many bars to look back for swing high/low. And the group will be G underscore HL. And then our final user input is going to be use high/low filter. And this is another bool input. So the title will be use swing high/low filter. The default value will be false. And the tooltip is going to just say turns on/off the swing high/low filter. And the group will be G underscore HL. Let me save my code, check the settings menu, make sure everything looks okay. There we go, everything's organized under its own title, and we have our tooltips working so that if we publish this script or give it to someone else to use, they can understand exactly what each setting does. Now let's move on to actually coding the filter conditions. Let's start with the swing high/low filter since we already have the code here. I'm going to copy my look back input and paste it over our hard-coded look back length. So instead of 10, it's still going to be 10 by default, but we can now change that in the settings menu if we want to. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap all of this code in parentheses so that it becomes its own sort of condition. We know that whatever is contained within these parentheses will return true or false. And now we can add our use high-low filter boolean onto this swing high and swing low filter. So let me change the name of these two so that it's a little bit more clear what these do. Swing high filter, swing low filter. And here we need to check, is use high-low filter turned off? So we need to say not use HL filter. Or is this condition true? So let me add that on here as well. Not use HL filter, or is this true? So what we're saying here is, has the user not turned on use high-low filter? If so, our swing high filter and swing low filter will return true straight up without even trying to detect if the current bar is a swing high or if the previous bar was a swing high, and we skip this code altogether. Otherwise, if the user has turned on use high-low filter, and this is checked, then we check our OR condition. And our OR condition checks if the current bar is a swing high or a swing low, or if the previous bar was a swing high or a swing low. So now if I add filter on the end of these two variables, save my code, it should compile without any problems. There we go. And now if I reset my chart, and now let's make sure these are all turned off, and let's have a look at our chart. So notice that we have a lot more setups detected here. Here's a bullish engulfing candle in the middle of nowhere. Here's another one, a bearish engulfing candle. These engulfing candles are not swing high or lows, but if we come up to the settings menu and we turn on our swing high / low look back filter, they all go away. So there's our swing high and low filter implemented. Let's add the other two filters now. So I'm going to bring the code up a little bit, and I'm going to add my ATR filter at the very top here. So get ATR filter. So obviously the first thing we need to do in order to analyze or evaluate an ATR filter is get the ATR value. And to do that, we use the ta.atr inbuilt function from the technical analysis namespace. You could add a user input to adjust the length of your ATR period, but I'm just going to set it to a default 14 period, which is what the ATR is standard across most charting platforms. Now we need to get the candle size. So that's very easy. I'll create a new variable here called candle size, and that will be set to the high price minus the low price. So by subtracting the low from the high, we will get the candle size in points or pips, depending on whatever market you are using this on. It will get the candle size as an absolute number, and then we can compare that number to our average true range value down here. So let's add that code in now. We need to create one more variable here called ATR filter. And again, we need to check, is the ATR filter not turned on? So not use ATR filter. Or if the ATR filter is turned on, then we want to check if our candle size meets our filter conditions. So now we need to check, is our current candle size on the current bar divided by our ATR value less than our max ATR size? Maybe we can change this to say max ATR size. It's maybe a little bit more intuitive. So is the current bar divided by the ATR less than our max ATR size? Now we need to add this filter onto our candlestick detection code. So I can add on the end here and ATR filter onto both of these. This filter applies to both long and shorts. The swing low and high is obviously different for a long and a short trade, but the candle size filter is not different. We can apply the same filter to both patterns or any pattern that we detect. Now when I save my code, if I minimize the editor here, let's have a look at this giant green candle right here. If I measure from the high to the low roughly, we get about 540 points. And the ATR on that bar is 147 points, or 14.7 pips. So let's divide 540 by 147. 540 divided by 147 equals approximately 3.67. So 3.67, let's open up our ATR filter here. Let's turn it on, and let's set our filter to 3.6 and click OK. And there we go. This large candle has now been ignored by the script. Let's see what happens if we set it to 3.7. 3.7, now it's back. So our ATR filter is working perfectly. I can get rid of our ATR now. And now if I adjust this, let's set it to 2, for example. It will still ignore this bar, but it still is detecting these relatively large engulfing candles, but compared to the recent ATR, these candle sizes are acceptable according to our filter. So that's our ATR filter added. Let's add our final filter, the EMA filter. I'm going to do that under my ATR filter, get EMA filter. Again, the first thing we need is an indicator value. In this case, that's the EMA value. So EMA equals TA.EMA. We'll just use a default closing price source, like most moving averages use, and we'll set the length to EMA length from our settings menu, so 50 by default. So now we have the EMA value. To check if price action is above or below the EMA, we need two new variables. I'll call my first one EMA filter long, and the second one EMA filter short. EMA filter long is going to be set to the same sort of system we've used here. We need to check if the filter is not enabled first. So not use EMA filter, or is the current bar's closing price greater than our EMA value? And same for our short trade. Is the user not using the EMA filter? If so, then our EMA filter short variable will just return true. Or if the EMA filter is turned on, is the current closing price less than the EMA value? And now we can add this filter to the end of our candlestick pattern detection code. So on the end here, and EMA filter long and EMA filter short. So now we are combining all of our candlestick pattern code and our filters on the same line of code. And we will only detect these patterns if all of our filter conditions are met. And I don't know what happened there. Oh, it's because I changed the variable name there. Okay, so our script is pretty much completed. Let's just do one last thing here while we're here, just to demonstrate how to build out a useful tool here. Let's add alert conditions to the script so that we can be notified whenever a candlestick pattern is detected on our charts that meets all of our conditions. So here I'm going to say generate alerts. We'll just use the alert condition function here. I'm going to use two of these because we are going to separate our bullish engulfing candle alerts and our bearish engulfing candle alerts. The next parameter is a title. So I'll just say here bullish EC and bearish EC, and then a message. So the message will just say bullish engulfing candle detected on, and then I'm going to put in a placeholder tag here. A ticker in two curly brackets will be replaced with the current market we are on. So in this case, if this alert were to fire and I opened up my phone, it would say bullish engulfing candle detected on Euro US dollar. We can do the same here, bearish engulfing candle detected on ticker, and we are done. So now if I save my code, minimize my script, Pine Editor, and we come up to the alert dialog button, click on that, we can now select our candle filter script. We can choose from bullish and bearish engulfing candles, and then you can set this these options up however you want to. If you only want to be notified of confirmed signals, you'd set it to once per bar close. And our script is complete. Let's see what the EMA filter looks like. And actually, I completely forgot to, we need to draw the EMA. If we're using the EMA filter, we need to draw it onto our chart. Or we don't need to, but I think it's a good idea to, so that our user knows what's going on. So before we wrap up this lesson, let's do that really quickly. I'll just add one more plot beneath our plot shapes. And for this, we don't want to draw the EMA if we're not using the EMA filter. So we can say here, do we have use EMA filter turned on? Question mark. If so, we want to draw the EMA value. Otherwise, we want to draw NA or nothing. And then we can set our color. Let's change the color of the EMA based on where the price is above or below it. For that, it's very easy. We can just say, is EMA filter long true? If so, set the EMA to color.green. Otherwise, set it to color.red, and I'll give it a title of EMA. And so EMA filter long will only be true if we are using the EMA filter and the current close is greater than our EMA value. Let's save our script and let's test out the EMA filter. If I turn that on, we now have a EMA that changes color based on where the price is above or below it. And we are only detecting bullish engulfing candles above this 50 EMA. This is our trend or momentum filter. So let's find an example. Let me turn that off. Here is a bullish engulfing candle that occurred below the EMA. And obviously the same for shorts. We are not detecting short bearish engulfing candle setups above the 50 EMA. So if I turn on our EMA filter, that setup goes away and that setup goes away. And we can obviously tweak our EMA length if we want to. And we can tweak our look back for swing highs and lows if we want to. Now we're detecting more setups because we're not looking back quite as far for those swing lows and swing highs. And that is it for today's lesson. This is a step up from the previous lessons in terms of we're getting a little bit more advanced here. In the next section of the course, we will start exploring indicators in more detail. In the meantime, the source code to the script will be beneath for you to play around with. You should be able to copy and paste most of these filters and make sure to include the user input code as well. You should be able to copy these into any script you're working with if you want to add some of these filters to those scripts. And in future lessons, we'll explore other filters such as other indicator conditions, RSI, stochastic, MACD, maybe even Bollinger Bands, Ichimoku Cloud, all of that stuff. We will experiment with different filters that we can use in our scripts. And especially later on in the course when we get to strategies, and we start building actual strategies to trade the markets. In theory, I mean, most of these lessons are just examples, but some of the lessons later in the course, I'll be showing you scripts and strategies that I've used in the past to profitably trade the Forex markets. So we will get to that eventually, but for now we need to understand the foundations of PineScript, how to build a script out from the ground up, from getting user inputs to getting filters, detecting candlestick patterns, drawing this data to the charts. Later on in the next section, we'll start exploring calculating stop loss and profit targets. And much later on when we get to strategies, we'll experiment with various exit reasons. So rather than just using fixed take profit and stop losses, maybe we want to have trailing stops and candlestick pattern detection, exits, all of that stuff. But for now, that will wrap up the candlestick detection section of this course. I'll speak with you in the next lesson.